All right. So yesterday I was watching The Epic Economist with Mello, and somehow while we were doing that, I was thinking again about watching According to Nicole and how a large percentage, you're talking about above 40% of the jobs that are currently advertised are jobs that aren't real. And to that end, I've heard dozens of people say the same thing. I can't find a better job. They want better jobs. But the reality is that you keep looking and looking and looking for another job because just this past week, a very high profile character told me that their last day was this upcoming Friday. And I was kind of taken aback by it because I had grown quite close to this person. And she'd only worked there for maybe 10 months tops. And so I was kind of curious because I had the same conversation with her about 3 or 4 months ago. And she told me, Millennial Steam, I'm scared. I'm scared that I'm going to lose my job. And a couple of days ago, it wasn't in a conversation. She didn't want to say this out loud. But 20 minutes afterwards, the words were spoken. I'm leaving. And when I asked her, it's like, oh, so where are you going to work now? Her response was, I don't know. And I think that for a lot of people, at all the evil corps across this entire country, the reductions in workforce at all the large tech companies are showing people that 2025, at least the second half of it, is going to be miserable for all of those people out there in the world that are looking for any job. Because it's it's different when there's lots of work out there. It's almost impossible when everyone wants the same job. And all the good jobs that used to be in society that weren't that hard to get have a lot of competition. They have, you're talking about being rejected from McDonald's because they don't think you're a good fit. Whereas I've been told many times at job interviews, we think you would be bored here. And the reality also comes down to they want to have as few people as humanly possible working. And I'll tell you what, after a while, those few people that you have working would prefer to run into oncoming traffic rather than deal with a daily grind that doesn't even pay them enough to cover rent. Therefore, after work, they're forced to go out and look for another job. So you're talking about getting out of work at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, then going to your second job, then on the weekends getting up at 8 and doing another job, and then going to your weekend part-time job. And that doesn't even guarantee that you're going to be comfortable. You're still going to be in survival mode because the wages are so bad. All right, let's do our opening monologue. If you've been applying for jobs and hearing nothing back, don't worry. You're not broken. You're just being used for data. Companies aren't hiring. They're farming resumes, faking growth, and gaslighting the unemployed into thinking it's their fault. I've spent months sending out carefully crafted applications only to realize I'm playing a rigged game where the prize doesn't exist. Welcome to the modern job market, a haunted house full of ghosts, jobs, and invisible gatekeepers. I would say, welcome to the jungle, people. And this isn't the kind of jungle that has fun and games. This is you creeping closer and closer to living on the street or moving into your car. For millions of people, this year is going to be the year in which you're living in your car. Not out of necessity, not like Claire on the road, but living in your car ugly. Living in your car the way I saw a man a few years back, living in a Jeep Cherokee in the parking lot on the south side of the Kroger's down the street from my house. He just sat there in that car with the front door open, his legs hanging out, just sitting there, waiting and waiting. Waiting for what? That's the hardest part about being a homeless person, is that you just sit there and wherever you're sitting and you're just killing time. You've got nowhere to go. You've got nowhere to be, and you have no idea what you're going to eat next. You're like an animal, but not like a zoo animal. You're more like a feral cat, right? You're surrounded by the constructs of our society, but you don't belong anywhere. Talking point number one: companies post fake job listings not to hire, but to manipulate perception. It makes them look like they're expanding. Hello, stock boost. Keeps employees anxious about being replaced, and farmers' resumes like a and farmers' resumes like digital cattle. You're not being ignored. You're being cataloged. I've said this about everyone who's asked me about a job that they listing that was questionable. And I've told them, if you look at the phone number and it's not local, don't answer it. If you're getting a phone call from a country code that's not America, that's India primarily, don't answer the phone. It's a waste of time. I don't know. In my most desperate times, I would get these amazing job offers from these recruiters from India about working for Apple or Google or Microsoft, and you're just like, yeah, that's not a real job. And then you'd give them your personal information, and you'd never hear back. And now they have your phone number, your all your contact information to sell or do with whatever they want. And it becomes out of desperation that you pick up the phone, because sometimes you see the same jobs opening up over and over and over again, and only the truly desperate stay long term, and only the truly desperate will take a $17 an hour job as a middle-aged man. Imagine that. You're working at Chipotle as a middle-aged man, and you know you can't make it on that job. You know, you look at your bills, and then you look at what you make, and then you have to ask yourself, why did I take this job? Because it was the only one that would take me. So that's what I see every time I drive through at a fast food place or at a coffee shop. The coffee shops have a tendency to have younger people in them. That's kind of something I've noticed about BlackRock or Dutch or Starbucks, is that they have a tendency to have much younger female workers, whereas McDonald's, even Chick-fil-A has had some like really old people. What is it? They just opened a Carl's Jr. Oh no, that's not a Wendy's close to the office. And the other day I looked inside; it was all old people and minorities. And I thought, yikes! I mean, how how do they target these people? Like, when you look at the specific people working at a business, and you think to yourself, geez, these are America's most desperate people, making 14.75 an hour, no possibility of promotion, and more than likely workers that are only going to stay for a few weeks at a time. There are certain positions that have high turnover. Sales, whatchamacallit, retail work, car washes, warehouses. You're only going to tolerate it so long. Like, every time I would talk to Mello in the last few months, it was always her back hurting from having to do the same thing every day, lift heavy sodas into displays. And it just took, in my opinion, she was working a warehouse job without a warehouse, moving stock, stacking stock, moving stock, stacking stock, 8 to 12 hours a day. But if that's the only thing that you can do for money, that's In my opinion, people rise up to the level of their abilities. Your innate ability is what tops you out at work. And for the vast majority of us, we can only do so many things. We can only be pushed so hard. They can only jam the stick back there while you're chasing the carrot so hard. Pound Town is always waiting for you when you wake up at 8 a.m. And you're always on the receiving end of Pound Town. Talking point number two, ATS software filters out resumes that don't match exact corporate buzzwords. Regardless of your actual qualifications, most resumes never see human eyes. It's less about hiring the best and more about hiring the most robotically optimized. So, when I was working at the university, I would do this to all my resumes. I'd literally copy the job description word for word from their listing and add it to my resume because they wanted to see these words exactly the way that they were looking for people. Because when you have a generic resume like mine that's got years working over here, over there, doing whatever they want you to do, it's not exactly optimized for one specific job, let alone today's job market that has you doing 50 jobs instead of one job. No person that I know of has just one job anymore. Even within your own pound town, you're going to get pounded from different angles in ways that you had never imagined possible, holding your legs up behind your neck while your arms are dangling on the floor. A human pretzel is what they have turned the job market into in our current age. You have to do work yoga in order to be able to keep your job. And if you're not capable of bending yourself into a pretzel, the ATS software is going to weed you out. Because if your resume is very generic, even though it says everything they want you to be able to do on your resume, they're still going to ask you some weird question about something you've never heard of. And you're just going to sit there and wonder why you didn't add that when it was something that you could have just added. But you chose not to, so the software filtered you out. But that's the world we live in. And when I would do this at the university, I remember getting in trouble because they kept asking me why I kept getting job interviews. And I'm like, because I tailor my resume to every single job position. And they told me I'm not allowed to do that. But now I told them if I don't do that, then I won't get an interview. Well, they didn't like that either. So I don't know. It's a cat and mouse game when it comes to employment in this country, and most of the time you're on the losing end. That's why you guys tell me in the comments all the time. You're applying, you're applying, you're applying, and no one's calling you back. Like, I think my worker's gone out to about half a dozen interviews, like, and no call back. Nearly everyone that I talk to privately from YouTube, I may not know all of you, but I still talk to you, have told me the same thing. You're applying and applying and applying. You're going through multi-stage job interviews like I did when I applied for Google. I did 3 interviews. I did 2 in person, 1 paper test. And then after the third interview, they didn't call me back. And I was just like, well, that sucked. But it is the way of the world. It's their world. We just get to live in it. Or should I say, suffer in it. Talking point number 3. The job market is rigged to keep workers begging, applying endlessly, and blaming themselves. Meanwhile, companies exploit that chaos to cut wages, deny promotions, boost productivity, all while insisting you don't want to work. This was the subject before my channel got demonetized last August. This was the title that I was using on a regular basis. Nobody wants to work anymore. And it was all over the place, especially during the pandemic when people were getting enhanced unemployment benefits. So as for me, during that time, I was getting paid $300 a week working about 31 hours is all they would give me for working at Walmart. So I was making about $300 a week. And with enhanced unemployment benefits, I was making $800 a week. You tell me what problem Walmart has when you can not work and make $800 a week or bust your hump in a job that's miserable for $300 a week. Of course, they had to come out here and shame the people who wouldn't take those essential jobs and make it seem like every loser was some sort of hero because they were essential. Very quickly after you were no longer essential, you understood what you really were: disposable. They needed those people working so they can maintain corporate profits high and make certain that their wealthier customers had access to their products. Now, the underclass of people, the essential people, well, they were just sacrificed. And that's something that I feel is happening even in present day America, is that there are more and more people who are being sacrificed in low paying jobs, overqualified people working in low paying jobs, which I will fast forward to an example. This week, somewhere I saw this image of a 1900s American family, classic white, blue-eyed, blonde-haired family of four, and in the caption it said, "We did it before and we can do it again. Farm jobs." To that, I would also add factory jobs. Yes, Americans after the great industrial revolution had to leave the farming jobs behind and come into the city and start doing the warehouse, the factory jobs, basically modern day Amazon. But to return back to the hard life in the fields with the same pay that they were giving to the migrants under the same brutal conditions, under the same style of working, in a sense, returning America back to a plantation style workday, except with the middle class. And the reason why we had to have slavery is because you couldn't create enough wealth. In order for that plantation owner to make all of the money, you had to have slaves, which in my America, in present day America, slaving is very ordinary, to the point where it is what most of us do, the 99%. No matter how hard we work at that plantation, the plantation owners want to make all the money. Again, coming back to that decision by the courts in 1919, where Henry Ford wanted his workers working for him to be able to buy his products, his Model Ts. Where Dodge said, no, we do not believe in the workers. We only want shareholders and above to make money here. This corporation only functions to enhance the people at the top. Everyone beneath them is 100% disposable, and it is not the corporation's responsibility to pay a responsible wage. And that to me is the most disgusting thing I've heard in a very long time. That they have no responsibility to pay the people who make their wealth a living wage. I tell everyone I know this wages are simple. 20% of whatever you make covers your rent. The other 20% covers your basic living expenses, your bills, your transportation, your food. The rest of it is leisure and savings. It shouldn't be 90% of your wages just to live in a one-bedroom rental in a house by a slumlord. Having your own apartment in today's economy is very, very difficult. In fact, yesterday, you guys saw that text message I got. As I was making that video yesterday, I got that text message of how bad her middle 20s, her Gen Z friends are doing out there in the job market. And I've heard this. I've heard people leaving their parents' house to go start working and then realize very quickly after they start working that their entire paycheck goes to rent and they need to move back home. If the parent is sympathetic, they'll say, yes, I understand. If the parent's being an 80s a-hole like my parents were, then they tell you, you just got to figure it out. You're not going to figure it out on a paycheck that's under $30 an hour. Now imagine a $15 an hour paycheck out there and this inflation. You're not going to make it. All right, let's see what ChatGPT created for our closing. You're not lazy. You're not unqualified. You're just stuck in a system built to waste your time and profit from your desperation. The job doesn't exist. The recruiter's a bot, and your resume is just digital confetti at this point. But knowing the truth is power, and maybe even the first step towards escape. So take your PTO, protect your peace, and if you ever feel crazy for doubting the system, just remember, they're not hiring, they're spying. Ouch. That's pretty powerful. And I don't have anything to add to that.